Hello, everyone. We are back once again with another episode of the Young Foolish podcast. And this week, we're going to continue our discussion on diets, which is the topic talked about, I think, 2 weeks ago. And this week, we're going to focus specifically on various diets that are common or are interesting to us, and just kind of get into how they work, their health consequences, I suppose, and just provide more insight on them. A couple disclaimers and announcements, I guess. First thing, Raymond's camera is not working. If you couldn't tell, for those who are watching the video version.
I can't tell. Amen.
Secondly, a new blog post is up. And it's about why I don't want to have a car. Not really related to these things, but it's an interesting topic that I spend quite a lot of time thinking about, and definitely relate a lot to just how I kind of live my life. And in terms of disclaimers, aside from Raymond's video, is that we are not experts on these nutrition, these diets, on these health consequences. So this is not medical advice. And I'm sure there are plenty of stuff that we didn't dive deep enough to uncover or have enough time to talk about in 1 hour, especially because we're going to go over quite a few diets. And also that the sources that we use to get our information will be linked in the description on the YouTube video. And to start off, I don't know if either one of you are really eager to go, but I'm ready to talk about intermittent fasting, which is something I started doing. Well, I've done it before, like I said previously, but started doing again.
Let's hear it.
All right. So intermittent fasting is basically just time-restricted eating. And there are a few popular methods of doing it. So the one I do, and a very popular one, is a 16 and 8. So 16 hours of fasting and 8 hours of eating. So that's basically every single day, right? You're putting it into windows of fasting and eating. So basically, during fasting, you just don't consume any calories. You could drink tea or coffee, but even if you add a little bit too much milk, that's like over. We'll get into a kind of why that is, but basically just can't break your fast during that window. Mm-hmm. And then during the 8 hours of eating, you could eat whenever you want and how much ever you want, whatever you want. Obviously, we're going to talk about other diets and kind of get into why you might not want to be just eating whatever or eating continuously. So another popular method is alternate day fasting. So you kind of eat one day and then the other day there's no calorie intake, or there's very minimal calorie intake. Definitely harder to maintain. Very interesting though, also pretty popular, like I said. And then there's the 5/2 method, which is 5 days of eating and then 2 non-consecutive days of no calories or low calories. So instead of on a day scale, you're alternating on a weekly scale. So you're kind of choosing the days in a week that you don't eat or barely eat, and then the days in which you do eat. And then there are even people who do a combination of like this 16 and 8 with a day in a week of not eating or consuming very little. So definitely more kind of sustainable while also pushing it a bit more than just the 16 and 8. So I find that to be very interesting. Personally, I like to eat every single day, so I'm not going to be trying that. The 16 and 8 works for me pretty well right now. So one of the kind of most talked about benefits of intermittent fasting is weight loss. And Honestly, like many other diets we're going to talk about, it's really just that when you're only eating during a certain period of time, it's just a lot easier to consume less calories.
Calorie restriction, baby.
Yeah, so it's more just a calorie restriction thing. But also in terms of weight loss and also fat loss, when you're waiting long enough during your fasting period, right? So 16 hours, the entire day, right? You're basically letting your insulin level go down. And insulin is primarily triggered by the intake of glucose, so from carbs, breaking that down to sugar, and that's the most basic component is the glucose. And insulin basically allows the cell to take in the glucose and use it as energy. But having excess, sugar, excess carbs, it's going to be stored as fat. So if you're not, consuming basically carbs or anything long enough, your insulin level will go down, and that your body's actually gonna use the stored fat for energy instead of whatever you just consumed.
Right?
That's kind of the idea.
No.
Pardon me?
You'd have to get into ketosis for that, because your liver can store a lot of carbohydrates. Your liver can store like 30 grams of carbohydrates. So it'll take a while for you to get into ketosis properly. So I'm not sure if the 16 to 8 one will necessarily get you all the way into like proper ketosis, where your body's running on ketones exclusively. Where at that point it's basically just running on fat. Because I've tried out like the ketogenic diet and things of the sort, intermittent fasting as well. I've done it before. So it's not like by the end of the 16 hours your body's going to be running exclusively off of ketones. I'm sure to some extent it'll be doing stuff like that. Obviously, if the cells can't take in the any like serum glucose that's running around, then obviously you won't be able to store much fat. So you won't get fatter on the intermittent fasting diet as easily as say on another diet, I'm sure. But by the end of those 16 hours, on the 16 to 8, I'm not 100% sure you'd be burning that much fat. It would mostly come, I think, from the calorie restriction portion of it that you'd be losing the weight from. Yeah. I
don't know if any of us are going to talk about kind of the keto diet specifically or about that process, but just kind of, I don't think we are, right?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so I guess just talking a little bit about it now, just to add on to what you're saying. So from like more recent research and kind of scientists who are really into nutrition and have all the resources, research, and just equipment to measure actual relevant levels or levels of relevant compounds, they actually found it to be really difficult to get into what's it called?
Ketosis.
To basically have your body, for your body to actually run on fat. So
because you have to deplete all your stored carbohydrates, because your liver contains a lot of carbohydrates, and it'll take probably a couple of days of eating like less than 30 grams of very few grams of a very small amount of carbohydrates will take you off the track to ketogenesis. So
and also you have to consume a lot more fat than people normally do. Well, I guess that depends on your diet.
I feel like that's more to do with the fact that just to meet your caloric needs, you're just gonna have to consume that much fat
because you can't consume the carbs, right?
So exactly.
But I'm just talking about like that's something. Like that's something you also have to think about if you're trying to get on the keto diet and talk about using burning fat in that way, right? So intermittent fasting, the idea of lowering the insulin level definitely help with that. And with the 16 and 8 hour one, it doesn't do nearly as much for that specifically. But compared to just the way digestive system works normally for most people, it does help. Like just from what you're saying about not storing any more glucose, for example, but also having getting into it slightly,
because the fat is gonna get burned off slowly, but it's gonna be.
But it's not. It's not as good as a lot of the people make it sound that are into it. and especially not the 60 and 8 one. So yeah, that's for sure. And the point I wanted to just make about that was that getting into burning fat and getting on the keto diet is actually more difficult than what a lot of people make it out to be as well.
Oh yeah,
and I feel like that's gonna be kind of a common theme in a lot of these, that the benefits are not quite as exaggerated as a lot of people make it seem, and to do certain stuff properly is actually more difficult than a lot of people make it seem, right? But another point about intermittent fasting is the metabolic health. So it helps to prevent chronic diseases. And helps with reducing inflammation. And that's because it lowers the basal levels of various compounds like insulin and glucose. And in the metabolic pathways, biochemically speaking, a lot of these things are markers for chronic diseases, for the likelihood of getting them and stuff like that. And this is also one of the reasons why you fast before doing blood tests and whatnot, because food and drinks, obviously, when you're consuming them, that's going to affect the levels of all kinds of things that tests measure. So for people to get an accurate measurement of the basal level, you got to fast, right? And when you're used to regularly fasting for periods, that basal level gets lowered and is more regulated. And because of that, over time, the likelihood of you getting some of the chronic diseases, like heart diseases, diabetes, stuff like that, is just way lower. Like, it's just less likely you get those things. And obviously, that's going to help with anti-aging, and that's mainly shown in rats as opposed to people, just because not only for this. It's not so much of a diet, but more kind of a way of eating. That studies aren't really done in human for long periods of time. And if they are, there are a lot of times confounding factors that makes the study kind of not quite as reliable and doesn't really show results that are nearly as significant or meaningful. But in rats, in terms of fasting versus non-fasting, the rats that fasted had longer lifespans. And because we know it lowers the basal levels of various compounds and reduces the likelihood of getting various diseases, these two related leads people to believe that it has anti-aging effects over time. And I think just having a caloric restriction over time has also shown to help with that, right? I was just about
to say. Yeah. In a lot of, for example, I think there's this one community somewhere in Japan or something where they have like a really high rate of centenarians. Like, a lot of people get to 100, and you look at their diets, nobody over there is obese. Not a single one, bro. Because it's all these calorie restrictions.
The same thing with Sardinia, the Italian island.
Oh, yeah, that one's nuts.
There's a few places that are just like, they all come from these few places. Yeah.
Just in general, calorie restriction is pretty good for your health,
Yeah, and I'm sure as we talk about more again, of definitely advice. In general. Yeah, and there's also like a balance to it.
Yeah. A lot of people hear like calorie restrictions, and they've been kind of conditioned, especially nowadays, because there's almost kind of a reversal. Because for the longest time, you had these crazy yo-yo diets being kind of advertised, and they were like super unsustainable diets. They were really niche. They were really weird diets. People might have a lot of people have been put off from diets in general because of those things, and they kind of, or they might be scared because people hear these horror stories about people with like bulimia or anorexia. But restricting your calories for the average person, again, not medical advice, but I'm pretty sure there's a lot of empirical evidence that shows it's probably one of the better things you can do for your health. And then also another thing too with the calorie restriction and intermittent fasting, since you're not going to be having as many meals, or you might have just as many meals, but it's going to be over a smaller period of time. You'll obviously be eating, relatively speaking, less. You can force yourself to eat more, but it's going to be hard to fit in that same amount of volume of food.
Exactly.
So then it also makes it easier for you to be more selective with your food. So then you can have higher quality food, and that'll also just help out with a bunch of other stuff too. So intermittent fasting is goated. Very nice.
Yeah. So I think when we talk about all of these diets, a lot of people could probably pick out ones where they feel like could work nicely together or have elements of a few of these things, and just to kind of, make it work for their lifestyle and gain the health benefits that they desire, essentially, or find most important and whatnot. So the last thing I wanted to get into for intermittent fasting is the hormone levels. So there's been quite a few studies over years. Well, I think first one dates back to like the 80s, but there has been ones done in the 90s and also more recently. Haven't looked in detail into all of them, but they have found that fasting in general helps with the increase of human growth hormone, right? And also obviously decreasing the insulin levels. And the other thing is that it enhances dopamine release. And I remember even from the one podcast that we were talking about before, like he talks about that.
Do you know if it increases your basal dopamine levels, or does it increase?
I think it lowers
basal dopamine levels.
Yeah, and then enhances release. I believe that's what I read. Once again, that's not the main focus of what I was looking for. Yeah, and also it's difficult to kind of find a lot of good research on it. So definitely have to look more into that if you're going to get into how exactly it works and what exactly it does and how much it really affects the dopamine levels and the release and whatnot.
I mean, from the sounds of it, though, it sounds like whatever it does, it sounds like it increases that difference in between the peak and the basal. And I think that's probably one of the more important things. That's what you're looking for. If you're looking for a healthier dopaminergic system. And in general, obviously, if you have chronically low dopamine levels, then you probably got some issues there. You probably want to fix it. It's probably not good. Not good. No. No Parkinson's disease here. Thank you. No, sir.
Bro. Yeah. This isn't so much about intermittent fasting. I'm kind of done talking about that. So that's kind of the research I did. But in terms of just from reading papers and looking at diets in general, and like I was talking about before, we really need long-term studies in humans that limits the confounding factors. So obviously have people that fast and don't, but also have controls with different groups. And for example, have each group do the same level of exercise, same kind of sleeping schedule, same type of diet. Right. So like this is specifically about if we want to see how much intermittent fasting really impacts our health in the long time. Right. So a lot of these factors, I think, if you want to do a proper research, needs to be addressed. Right. And then I think regularly you got to measure all kinds of levels on the cellular level. You got to measure kind of physically, how the body is functioning and how I guess in terms of weight and in terms of certain sizes as well. And also cognitively, how you're performing, right? And even just thinking about all the factors you have to control and thinking about all the regular tests you have to do. Like it's just going to be very difficult and costly. Just like the logistics of doing it. Like,
bananas. Like even getting a decent sample size. Like you'd be happy to just get like 20 people or 25 people to do it, and then beyond that, a lot of research, especially nowadays, is more of an emphasis on how culturally relevant it might be. So you do the study in Canada with like, Canada might not be so bad because we're very like culturally diverse. There's a lot of genetic pool here is quite diverse. But you do it somewhere else in the States, it might be different results than you get somewhere else. In general, with the mechanisms at play here, I would assume it would be quite similar, regardless of where you do it. But still, it would probably affect it quite significantly. So it would be very difficult to get really, really good universally applicable data on this. Yeah.
And just thinking about it, if we had all of those kind of controls addressed and all the different tests done, all the levels and abilities measured, like not only will we be able to kind of see a trend for those who fasted versus those who don't, like if a trend exists, we will also be able to see which combination of fasting, sleep, diet, and exercise has the greatest health benefits overall, right? So like in that sense, what you're getting out of like a research like that is more than just the fasting alone. You're really getting to look at health in general, right? And because you're addressing all these different factors, you could isolate the factor of fasting alone as well. But like I said, very difficult to do that, and there's probably factors that I'm not even thinking about.
I mean, all those factors combined probably have so much interplay in between each other. They probably interact so much, right?
Yeah.
So for intermittent fasting, you might find like, people who sleep this much might work. You see like the maximal effects of this much amount of sleep. But what happens if people sleep less? Or what happens if they eat a slightly different diet, right? So there's like a million different things that it's so complicated. Yeah, that's one of the reasons why nutrition in general is just so difficult. There's just so many factors at play. Even now, like it's been relatively recently that, like for example, this whole kind of like gut microbiome revolution. It's relatively recent. For the longest time, we didn't realize how important all that jazz is, but it turns out quite important. I haven't even started looking into it, but it's one of those things where it's like out of nowhere, you just get this factor that just, it's like, what the heck?
Yeah, it's actually so important because like how much is your body itself doing it and how much is like the bacteria in there that's actually, breaking down stuff and just sorting out everything and all that.
I feel like that's just before we move on to Raymond's, I feel like this is probably one of the reasons why it's so important to just try things yourself and see how you feel when you're doing stuff and to adapt this research to your own needs. Because the research might say this is optimal, but then for you just might not feel as good as when you do other stuff. Right? So difficult stuff.
I think the biggest part is just like, everyone's body works different ways. You literally can't, have like a 100%, foolproof way of testing all these diets. Some people may react differently to the same diet than others. Like, for example, like some people take Advil and it doesn't work for them, right? But then they take like Tylenol and it works, like maybe they just don't react well to ibuprofen or, so I think genetics definitely plays.
Genetics, epigenetics.
Even just long-term habits and current lifestyles.
Even experiences in like early childhood, even if you've been so far removed from those circumstances, maybe like I'm sure there's like consequences if you were like say malnutritioned as a child. I'm pretty sure there's like long-term health consequences because of that. Not necessarily bad. Well, I'm sure this is probably bad, but you'll probably react differently to certain things. If your body was adapted to that at a young age, right? So it's really complicated.
Yeah, also like existing conditions have huge effects. If you're pregnant, bro, like everything changes.
Damn, bro, I hate it when I'm pregnant, bro. It changes everything for me.
It happens all the
time. Oh my god.
All right, Ray, you're gonna talk about the carnivore diet, eh?
Well, okay. Like I think, generally speaking, I just want to like touch on diet overall. Okay. I think it really depends person to person. Like honestly, you can't really have the same thing. But like as George was saying, for intermittent fasting, I think generally speaking, it's a good way. It's not a very like diet heavy, right? It's not very like limited to what you can eat. I think that's generally a good way to either maintain your body weight, your current body weight, or to slowly lose some body weight. But that's like long term as well. And like I mean there's a bunch of other factors, but I think generally speaking, like diets man, like kind of rough to begin with.
Yeah.
But So for the carnivore diet, dude, man, my boys love meat, dude. My boys love meat. My meat, his meat, all the meats. So I don't know, like this, like I'm just gonna say this right away. There's not much studies on the carnivore diet. It's relatively new, and I don't think it's only brought into the spotlight in the past 4 years. I'm pretty sure it started like 4 years ago, like 2018. But and the researcher, or like the person who wrote the book on carnivore diet, got his doctor's license removed. So
Oh man.
so take this really cautiously on what I'm about to say. um, but I read that, I was like, damn, bro, okay, I see what I got myself into. I think overall, generally speaking, it's not a terrible diet. I definitely think it has a lot of positives and benefits to it. And the negatives on the carnivore diet, besides like massive diarrhea, like when you go to shit, pretty sure like the first like
that's a clip right there.
pretty sure the first like few weeks, like, or like month, when you get into it, like it's you shit, man. It is just horrible, dude.
I would imagine.
Yeah. But other than that, like, so like it's kind of weird. Like the benefits of it go a long way. Like there's it kind of branches out into a lot of like I guess overall, I don't know, like side effects, but like positively, like so for carnivore diet, you don't, like there's no like, you're limited to meat, zero carb diet. It's kind of like keto in a way, except you have more protein, right? Rather than like more, or generally more just fat. And so you can kind of see how both of them have like interconnected like benefits to each of them that are kind of like similar in a way. But I think overall, I think carnivore diet is just better than the keto. But don't take my word for it.
No. It's cap.
It's definitely easier than the keto, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, so much easier. You get to taste food. That's good. Unless you're a vegetarian.
I feel like the keto diet doesn't put a restriction on meat. It's just why would you want to eat that much meat?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think because it just takes, you'll get more energy from the fat, because when your body digests the fat, right,
oh yes,
you get it takes a lot more energy to digest the meat. So even though if you have the same amount of calories in the meat, right, because it'll say the calorie, but they just use a calorimeter to determine those calories, right?
Yeah.
But that's not how your body works. Your body has to put in more work to get the same calories out of the meat. So I think that's kind of probably going to be the biggest difference in between the keto and carnivore diet. You're just going to be consuming less meat, which takes less of a toll on your body. But either way, I'll let you continue.
No, like I see your point, like, but I think overall, because studies have also shown, like it does improve your overall daily amount of like energy, I guess. Even though like I assume it takes at least a month or two to get into it, for your body to adapt into a fully like like proper carnivore diet. Because if done properly, you do get more energy than what you start out with.
It's not the energy that you feel. It's like I was talking more about the calorie perspective, because the energy, that's got a lot to do with like your neurochemistry and all that stuff going on. I feel like that's probably more relevant. But,
and that's
like,
why it depends on people to people.
And like the metabolites that you have, I'm assuming, because like there's all this research out there on like the negative consequences of eating too much red meat, right?
Yeah.
I feel like in the long term, that's where the carnivore diet would probably start falling apart. not falling
Well, you
apart.
see,
But
But you
also
see the
those
effect.
research aren't like
Yeah.
that reliable either.
Yeah.
No, not yet.
Because
it's
it's
not the same as looking at the carnivore diet where you're probably eating some more higher quality meats and things like that. It's probably looking like hamburgers or whatever. I don't know.
like it's generally like
Yeah.
there is no long-term study yet, like you
Yeah.
know, like a proper long-term study. So like that's the one thing that's kind of like you could do a carnivore diet for a long term, but like you don't know like what's gonna happen, right?
Yeah.
Like you really don't know. But I feel like it's more of like a short-term thing, because generally speaking, like keto and carnivore, people mainly go to those diets to lose weight. But so there's like cases where it has dramatically improved, like I guess people's like health wise, you know, like their issues.
Yeah, who is it? This is like Michaela Peterson and Jordan Peterson, I think, are on the carnivore diet. And I think they have like really chronic inflammatory issues. And they found, I think some of these, at least Michaela Peterson, I think, had some really bad arthritis or something.
So yeah, no, like
I think like
you
George
know,
was mentioning,
they had
like, if you're on just like a carnivore diet, you're not going to have these crazy insulin spikes. That might help.
Yeah,
a lot.
exactly.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking like how much of that is just due to not having carbs, you know?
Yeah, like there's definitely like, I think carbs is a huge issue. I think it's the main issue for you know, the arthritis, and like, you know, because she had like 3 joint replacements by this time she was 17, which is
it was
insane.
Pretty bad. yeah. Like, God damn. Yikes.
But
Can't
yeah,
relate.
like turning into like a carb-free diet, like it literally just fixed itself. Like she has no problems since then. And for Jordan Peterson, he had like chronic depression, right? And he said that, you know, carnivore diet has helped that. I don't know how much it is.
I wonder
just
really
from the diet,
too.
but
yeah, because like we were talking about earlier, like intermittent fasting, you don't get these crazy insulin spikes.
Like you
maybe
feel
on the
better
carnivore
overall.
diet, you have these similar kinds of. Maybe, I'm not sure. It kind of depends on carnivore diet. I don't know what diet they're specifically on, but if it has similar effects, I wonder how much of the dopamine effects, so like the basal dopamine levels. I wonder how much of that is from the intermittent fasting, or how much of that is from the calorie restrictions, or I guess lacks of insulin spikes. You know what I mean? I wonder how much of that you
there's
still
just a
see.
lot.
There's
Like
a
a
lot
lot
that
of
go
different
into it,
factors.
Yeah, like that's the main thing. Like, you know, like diet, man, like you don't know what you're getting into until you actually try it.
It's all interconnected with so many different things. It's crazy.
I gotta say that having too much carbs too frequently, like there's no study that shows that's a good thing.
Nah.
That's for sure.
It's terrible. So bad. And like, oh my gosh, I felt so bad the other day, man. I felt so sad. I told my mom, like, yo, I want some mango juice, right? And like, juice in general has a lot of sugar. Sorry if I'm interrupting here, Raymond, but and she got me like this mango spoon. I'm like, oh, this is good, but like, nah, I was talking about the Rubicon shit, bro. You know the Rubicon, the good shit? That's the stuff. She comes home with the Rubicon the next time. Oh my god, bro! I read the label. It's so bad. It's just sugar. Nothing. That Rubicon stuff. It doesn't even. Like, I read the label. And it's like, it doesn't even say fruit juice. It doesn't even say mango juice. It's mango drink, because they can't even call it juice at this point. 250 milliliters of that has 32% of your recommended carbohydrate intake. One glass is like, I don't know how many milliliters, but like, like a glass and a half of that, and you're done carbohydrates wise. And like, of course, you're going to eat more. God damn, bro. I can't even have mango juice anymore. Come on. That got me really bummed, because that stuff is so good.
Bro, mango slaps.
It slaps so hard.
True.
And that Rubicon drink, it's the sugar in it, obviously, but I feel so sad. Because it's not, it's probably worse than just drinking pop, bro. At that point.
Yes. Relating to that, in general, liquid calories, much easier to get into your body. So if you're trying to put on weight for whatever reason, well, that's kind of a hack for you. And for those people who are trying to lose weight or maintain weight, just be careful about like how much calories are in your drinks, because you don't really notice those nearly as much.
It's pretty nuts, yeah.
Especially the sugars in them. Like, damn.
Sugar's definitely the biggest issue I find. So as like carbs, like generally speaking, if you're trying to lose weight, here's the best tip. It's calories in, calories out, bro. You lose more calories than you take in on that day, you lose weight, right? And then if you do that for a long period of time, you lose weight. And I think that's the main takeaway for majority of the diets. It's just taking in less calories overall. So like, you know, like for intermittent fasting, you know, maybe it's not like maybe it's not less calories overall, but like you do put yourself in starvation mode kind of, and like that really helps. But I think generally for majority of diets, it's just calories in, calories out.
Yeah.
And like, bro, like, dude, when people say, "Oh no, I'm gonna eat a salad," dude. Okay, I get it. You know, low calories, whatever. But oh man, the
The
sauce.
sauce. The sauce.
It's the
is
sauce that gets
dressing.
people. Yeah.
What's that? The Cheesecake Factory? No, not Cheesecake Factory. Is it Cheesecake Factory? There's just
Not
one
sure.
restaurant. I think it's Cheesecake Factory. I've never been, but apparently their salads are fucking bananas because I'm sure they must taste great because apparently their salads are like 1,500 calories for a salad.
Oh my god.
I'm not exaggerating, man. This is insane. Like 1,500 calories for a salad. What are they putting in that?
Oh my god.
Honestly, man, just get some leaves, put a little bit of olive oil, put a little bit of balsamic vinegar, you're good.
Yeah.
It's not so long.
Bro, legit just melted nacho cheese on it. But it's on a salad though. God damn. But while you're looking for the calories of the salad, so there was also another case where so like Australian Jane Jordan, who's a former nurse.
Okay.
She was doing keto diet for 7 years, right? And you know, like she had really good results.
Yeah.
You know, good blood pressure, blood sugar, you know, lost weight, you know, no more migraines.
Yeah.
But I think cuz that was in that was for the last 7 years. But then in 2018, you know, when Carnivore Diet was just beginning to, you know, go on the rise, I guess. She was diagnosed with like early stage glaucoma.
Wow.
And it runs in her family too. So like it's partly genetics.
Yeah.
And you know, basically people generally speaking were saying, oh, okay, like, you know, like zero carb diets might help, you know, like with eyesight and stuff. But it didn't really do too much, because like I don't know, like it didn't help as much as she thought it would, especially just being on keto. So after like a study, right, a recent study that said, you know, vitamin B3, nicotinamide,
Okay.
can help and prevent glaucoma.
Yeah.
And you know, the highest of, you know, the foods that contain the highest of that micronutrient is meat, right? Mainly poultry and seafood.
Okay.
So she decides to go on it. And after around 7 months of the carnivore diet, you know, she went to retest her eyes.
Yeah.
In October that year, 2018, and they found no evidence of the disease. And like I think that's just, you know, it's kind of bizarre. Like you don't know, like, you know, it could just be the whatever nutrient she needed that really helped her out, and not necessarily like carnivore diet. But that's like a case
glaucoma,
where
what's what isn't glaucoma related a lot to like insulin levels as well too? And like
I think a lot of stuff.
Yeah. So I feel like,
but the thing is, she was on keto for 7 years though.
Was she?
Before that, yeah.
Was it
but
like proper keto? It's really hard to be on keto.
Yeah.
Because legit,
Yeah.
just like you don't like.
Well,
it's,
she's a nurse. Like I assume she was on, proper keto. If she's doing it for 7
like
years,
legitimately
it's
one
very
tiny
difficult.
like dude like legit 30 grams of carb. No, not even 30 grams. Like just it takes like you can't even have like a quarter of a slice of bread. It'll throw you off keto and you're done. Because as soon as you get that glucose in your system, you're out of ketosis. You're done.
Yeah.
Like,
well, like,
you need to be incredibly strict with your carbohydrate intake to maintain.
You gotta be very diligent.
It's pretty nuts. Like, there's no chilling, bro. Like, you one scoop of the wrong thing and you're done for the day.
You're done.
You're done.
Yeah, I mean, working as a nurse as well, it's a tough schedule.
It is.
It's hard to maintain any proper diet.
So it's one of those things like you legitimately to be in ketosis, you couldn't go home and have like a single juice box. You couldn't do it. It would fuck it all up. It would throw a monkey wrench into the whole thing. Not a single juice box.
Yeah. Overall, like in terms of carb intake and insulin levels, with that diet, whatever she was trying, it should still be much better than
it should be. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Well,
so like the fact that the carnivore diet helped in some way does say something, right? It's just very difficult to
but then that also begs the question,
to see if it's just from the diet or not.
Too?
B3.
No, it's B3. Yeah.
Oh, can you not supplement B3?
I don't think
you can.
Like, but like I don't think she did that. She just said fuck it, like carnivore diet. Literally, and it completely reversed it though. Like there no evidence of the disease, especially if it runs genetically in the family too. Like I think that there's something there. Like I'm not sure if it's just from the diet itself or just like overall like other factors.
Well,
maybe environmental
I
factors
feel
as well.
That is kind of the benefits to a lot of these diets. It's the other factors that the diets bring to the table, right?
It just kind of come naturally, right?
That is like the fact that you have lower insulin levels, or the fact that you don't have these insulin spikes, or the fact that you have more vitamins in your diet. I feel like that is the benefits from these diets.
And also like I don't know exactly what diet she was on before, right? But with keto, obviously a lot of people don't eat much protein, right? And when you're not eating a lot of protein, and depending on what source of protein you're eating, it's very easy to not get all the amino acids that are required for your body to function properly. So maybe the amount of protein she was assuming and the sources of protein she was getting on the 7 years of doing that really just actually fucked her up, because she wasn't, addressing that aspect of her diet, right?
That's also
switching onto like the carnivore diet. Obviously, you're gonna get all the amino acids from any solid source of like meat, protein. You're gonna get basically all the necessary amino acids, all the essential amino acids, right? And then from that, that's gonna help your body function. And like I know we're gonna get into Lorenzo, and you're gonna talk about vegetarian diet, and there's a lot to get into for that for sure. But like one of the things is that it's just very difficult not very difficult, but it is not easy to get all the essential amino acids without any meat. The easiest way is probably just supplementation, obviously.
Yeah, that's the easiest way out.
I feel like a lot of these diets work if you just supplement it. Like say the carnivore diet, you could really just supplement all the nutrients you're missing.
With the carnivore diet, you're not even going to be missing that many nutrients, right?
There's some vitamins that are harder to get to the proper levels, but that's the same with a lot of diets.
For a lot of diets, your vitamin D intake or whatever, like everybody needs to supplement vitamin D, especially in the northern hemisphere.
Especially if you're darker skin too.
I just feel like the carnivore diet isn't going to be particularly at risk of being nutrient deficient more than any other diet.
I feel like it's a lot more easier to maintain, and it's a lot more easier to get the benefits of like similar benefits to other diets. Like I don't think it requires you as much as other diets do.
It's easier. It's not it's not
Yeah,
do
it's
have to
not
put
really
in some
demanding
work.
on your body.
Yeah.
But it's
Well,
not. Yeah, it's
I
just
feel
not
like
demanding on your
there is
body
quite a bit of
as much.
metabolic stress kind of involved in processing meat. Maybe when you're adaptive, like you mentioned, there's kind of like an adaptation period. I'm assuming that has to do a lot with like your microbiome.
Yeah,
That probably
but
has
at
to
the
take
same
some time
time,
to
like,
adapt.
yeah, but at the same time, like humans were originally, like we've already adapted to like a more meaty diet, in the past.
That's not,
Um,
yeah, but there's a lot that goes into it. Like you can't just,
Mm-hmm.
it's not like your body is just prepped and ready to go
yeah,
with the diet. Like it will take a while
I
for your
mean,
body to get
especially
adjusted to
now,
any
but
diet, you know? It
Mm-hmm.
takes a
yeah,
while.
Definitely. Yeah.
So it's
And
not, yeah.
like we were talking about earlier, it just really depends person to person. Some people are just not very good at digesting meat, right? So
yeah.
if they
I
were to
mean,
gonna go on the carnivore diet, it's gonna be a struggle for sure.
Like
They might
genetically,
like
yeah.
yeah,
I mean, some
genetically
people,
humans are fit to be on a more carnivorous diet, but
yeah,
that doesn't mean that your body's going to
all,
immediately be ready to go 100% carnivore diet full send right away. It's going to take a while for it to get
yeah.
used to, for the microbiome to adjust. Maybe there's epigenetics that goes into it, probably things like
I
that.
think like generally speaking, like it is the same as other diets in a way, like where
Yeah,
not everyone has the same results, right?
Mhm.
yeah, no, for
Um,
sure. Like some people on the
so
carnivore diet feel like complete shit.
yeah,
And
man.
Mhm.
Like some
Michaela
people,
Peterson, like she just almost can't eat any other diet.
Yeah.
Otherwise, she
Yeah.
gets this chronic.
She has
inflammatory disease.
medical records to show that she can't.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How are you gonna dispute that? Like,
Yeah, you can't.
Yeah.
It's very individual basis.
yeah.
yeah, but
So maybe now we could get into more of the vegetarian diets and kind of that umbrella term.
Yeah.
yeah,
So vegetarian diet, there's a lot of research on it. Not that I looked at very much of it, because a lot of it is like a lot of things we've touched upon kind of apply to vegetarian diet as well. So, for example, first of all, vegetarian diet, very much an umbrella term, because it's really just the exclusion of meat, basically, right? You have like, I think the most popular types of vegetarianism, you'll still be eating eggs and you'll still be eating dairy products. And that's an important distinction to make, in particular with the eggs, because the eggs can have a lot of really good fats too, which can be a little harder to come by if you don't somehow specifically plan to go about getting those fats. You know what I mean? If you're on a very strict vegetarian, like vegan diet, it's very difficult to get those same fats, to get those same things, and that's really important for like your hormonal health and whatnot. But basically,
Olive oil,
just
man.
the exclusion of meat by itself, it's really not that bad. It's just you kind of have to plan around it. There's not really too many health benefits that I could right now personally pin down myself and say like, okay, this will happen if you stop eating meat, because, well, first of all, obviously, like we just mentioned, it's very individual, but also there's a lot of confounding variables. The majority of vegetarians are going to be health conscious people, so it's no surprise that vegetarians typically are more healthful than your typical meat eaters. Not like, say, somebody on a carnivore diet, but just say like somebody on just a regular diet, or eat fast food every now and then, eat a steak every now and then. A vegetarian is probably going to be more health conscious, and that makes it a little trickier to study, right? Because they're just healthier in general, so they might do more exercise. They'll be eating less processed or fast food sometimes, things like that. So, with it just being such a broad term, and vegetarians in general just being more health conscious, it's kind of hard to say like specifically, oh, this vegetarian diet is going to do this. And then also on top of that, one of the biggest, or one of the most well documented disadvantages to the vegetarian diet are a lot of nutrient deficiencies. For example, vitamin B12. That's something that's going to be that's going to be tricky to get without without source of like animal, not protein, because you don't get it from the protein. I think it's just the animal will have it, and then as you eat the animal, you get it yourself, right?
Yeah, I forget what it is, but like I eat pretty, normally, just kind of focusing on whole foods in terms of what I actually eat. I'm not all that restricted. I would say just lower carbs, but like I take vitamin B12 supplements just because from looking at it before, I just don't think I would be getting enough from what I eat. So as someone who only eats kind of variations of vegetarian diets, like no meat and whatnot, it's probably even more difficult to get it.
Yeah, it is. But there's ways around it. Like there are vegetarian options that are high enough in vitamin B12. So really, most of like the negative sides to vegetarian diets are really documented in people with poor meal planning. People who don't try to account for these things. Yeah. If you account for the drawbacks for pretty much any of these diets that we're mentioning here, but specifically with the like vegetarian diets, if you plan around the nutrient deficiencies and you recognize like, hey, it's going to be really tricky for me to get this, and you either supplement it or you go out of your way to find a specific food that is sufficient in that nutrient to support your diet needs, then I feel typically like you'll be all good. Now, I don't know. Personally, I've noticed that not eating meat, because I've barely had any meat. I'm not super strict on them not meat eating part. It's just I don't go out of my way to get meat. If my parents make something and they have some left over, I'll eat some of it. Every now and then when we have sushi, I'll have some of it, but that's about it. So I'm eating meat no more than once a week, really, at this point. And for example, the transit time of your digestive system, significantly lower. I can tell you get way more bowel movements on a vegetarian diet than on a meat eating diet. That just tells me that like it just takes longer for your body to process the meat, which I'm not convinced is necessarily a bad thing. It's not to say, like, this meat is so bad.
It's just different.
It's just different, right? Yeah. I think there's more data to suggest that an overconsumption of meat is worse for you. But again, I haven't looked at these studies, so I'm not 100% sure what meat they were talking about. I don't know if they just did a correlational study, just asking people how often do you eat meat, and then they just try to like correlate rates of like cardiovascular health or whatever it is. But consuming too much red meat, there's been, again, I have to look at this because I've also heard studies in the contrary of this, but they suggest that such a consumption can be pretty bad as far as cancer goes. Just eating too much, say, bacon or whatever it is. It's like something like, eating too much bacon increases your chances of getting cancer. But again, that could be really misleading because if your chances are already super low, these tiny little lifestyle changes, even if it increases the chances by 200%, a 200% increase from 0.001 or whatever. Come on, man. That's... Who cares?
Honestly, man, so many statistics just get played around like that. It's just completely misleading in all aspects of life. Like they be pulling some stuff, man.
like your example with bacon, it might not necessarily be the bacon. It could be what comes of the bacon. Like all that oil, all that fat.
Well, I don't know. That's part of the bacon, I suppose. No, I mean, unless they're specifically adding the fat back in. I mean, I don't know, because how else are you can eat the bacon?
It's also like how they process it too.
Yeah.
Well, okay,
yeah. That's one of the things. Like for example, with the carnivore diet, that's why we need more studies on it because these other studies that focus on the consumption of red meat. I don't know. Did they control
like where they're getting it from?
Exactly, right. Yeah. So like if you're eating,
and even the way you cook it, man.
Yeah. Like that's the main thing. A lot of the problems or health issues people have from like eating any type of diet is just how they make it, like how they cook it, and also where they're getting it from, right? So I think like I don't know. I feel like a lot of, I wouldn't say majority, but I feel like a lot of like a good amount of vegetarians come with a lot of health issues as well because they don't, because it's harder to maintain. Like,
that's one of the things. Yeah, it is harder to maintain. Because you have to go out of your way to specifically plan for it. Like if you don't specifically account for your vegetarian diet, you're much more likely to suffer the consequences that people talk about, like the nutrient deficiencies and whatnot. On top of that, I've kind of felt this low key, man. I went to this one pho restaurant. Oh, let me tell you, this pho restaurant slaps, but they're vegetarian pho does not slap. Does not slap.
Hey, we've talked about this before, I think.
Yeah, we did. So, in that sense, like, you're just going to be more restricted with options, like, much more restricted with options. But to me, that doesn't speak, that's kind of like that's not related to the biology of the diet. So, to me, that's kind of like a personal choice thing. Like, how far are you willing to go, right?
That's
So
like an external factor.
yeah, personally, I have no problem.
Yeah.
Like it's not that bad of a sacrifice for me. Mostly because, like I think we talked about earlier, for me now, like back in high school, I would have told you I'm going on this diet it's for health reasons or whatever. Like I heard it's better for you, but nowadays I'm doing it more for like the ethical reasons. And for me, those ethical reasons outweigh the extra effort that you have to put into maintain, just being healthy. It's not that bad for me, but it is trickier. It's something people should consider. It's one of the downsides of it. So
yeah, like I feel like a lot of people who
I think
jump into diets.
Yeah, I feel like the vegetarian diet, if you just plan around the nutrient deficiencies, you're pretty much good to go. It's not going to change your life. Just eating less processed food is probably going to be the best thing that a vegetarian diet might do for you. Like you're not going to be eating those processed meats. You're probably not going to be eating as much fast food. So just the exclusion of that alone and the exclusion of things like sweets and things like that, which isn't related to the vegetarian diet, but it might be related to, say, like the carnivore diet. That's probably where most of the health benefits for a lot of these diets come from. It's just the fact that you're eating healthier, better food. Not necessarily that the specific foods that you're eating are healthy. It's just, they are healthy. It's just you're not eating unhealthy foods.
Yeah, like you're cutting out all the bad parts,
Yeah, it's an elimination of like the bad stuff is where you get most of the health benefits from. And then the other kind of smaller health benefits or nuances to the diets kind of differ between individuals a lot. So kind of anticlimactic, but vegetarian diet, not bad as long as you have proper meal planning.
Yeah. I honestly, I just think people who jump straight into diets and a lot of them like find it that it doesn't work or it makes it worse is because majority of them don't do the research beforehand or don't do it properly, and that's what really leads to issues when it comes to diets. You either have to full send it or not, right? Like you can't half-ass like it just.
The biggest issue with any sort of regimen that you're trying to implement into your life is going to be adherence, right? So any diet initially, especially if you're full sending it and it's like a big lifestyle change, is going to be very difficult to maintain, right? Initially. So unless you can really push through the first couple weeks and make a habit out of it and get a routine going, it's going to be it's going to be hard.
Like an example I would give it is like New Year, New Me type stuff. Like the New Year resolutions. You see it a lot with like people who, let's say, like they want to go into fitness or they want to like be healthier or better. They sign up for gyms. They show up the first like week or two, and they kind of stop or like they slowly like tread off. I feel like that's kind of the same. I think it's just consistency and like you gotta be determined to do it, or else it doesn't work.
If you're basing it out of motivation, I feel like it's really tricky to. I saw this one saying the other day. It's like action comes before motivation, or if you wait to be motivated to hit the gym, you're just gonna end up never hitting the gym. Or as soon as that motivation comes, you're gonna
just start doing it. You just gotta start doing it.
Yeah. The hardest part, of anything is starting, right? Especially like let's like a new hobby,
that's probably the second
that comes
hardest
after.
Part.
It's I'd say like number one is just starting, and then like what you said, sticking with it. Or
it's just because think about how many people start hitting the gym, but then like a month later they're by a month in, who's still hitting the gym. 2 months in, who's still hitting the gym?
It's also it's
same thing with diets.
It comes with a lot of things. Like studies. Like you gotta like do your own research on the diet or like on on the gym, in order to really like find a better understanding of it. I feel like once you get a better understanding of something, you tend to maintain it a lot more. Because if you don't know what you're doing, right, what you're eating, what you're supposed to do, you kind of feel lost, and your sense of giving up is far more greater than if you knew what was going on, if you knew like how to do this or how to do that, you just, I don't know, you stick with it a lot better, easier too.
Yeah, I think the other thing with being informed is that like you already made a certain amount of commitment and investment into doing the research and getting that information, right? So like you're already kind of starting it without actually starting anything, right? So you're kind of getting your foot through the door, and it's easier to just carry on that momentum. I think the last thing I want to cover in terms of diets is whole foods, which is something I'm definitely pretty big on.
And, what is the definition of whole foods? Not the store, but...
Yeah, definitely not the store, guys. So whole foods is basically talking about unprocessed foods.
Yeah.
So they're just naturally edible foods like fruits, vegetable, meats, nuts, stuff like that. And usually when we're talking about whole foods, they also include minimally processed foods like a lot of oils, like olive oil, and also whole grain pastas. Minimally processed stuff like that, right? Then when we talk about processed foods and overly processed foods, we're talking about stuff that has added salts, sugars, and fats, or even other artificial additives, chemicals added into it.
Yeah.
So one of the biggest kind of benefits of eating whole foods is just that it's much easier to maintain a healthy levels of salts, sugars, and fats. And the fats you do get are usually healthy fats, unless it's from like really fatty meats. But so yeah, the unsaturated fats, the ones with the double bonds and triple bonds, right? So because of these levels being maintained to normal level, it's less likely that you get chronic diseases like cardiovascular diseases and diabetes, right? So the prevention of these chronic diseases is basically the biggest thing with it. And also that like nutrients are not destroyed or removed in general in whole foods. But some processed foods can also retain nutrients and can even be fortified with additional nutrients like vitamins and whatnot. We see that with milk, orange juice, all kinds of things actually. Whole foods like fruits and whatnot provide fiber, so that's going to help a lot with gut health, like we mentioned.
And it'll also, with like fruits and whatnot, they might have like the same amount of sugar as say some processed food, but that fiber helps taper the insulin response that your body has to it, which is pretty important. That's a big thing to consider.
And also, I don't know what types of sugar exactly, but the sugar that's added are usually like the way you kind of have to digest them is a bit different. That's actually just not as good as natural sugars. Right? So better gut health once again contribute to the prevention of chronic diseases and overall health and overall function. And I would say that with whole foods, it's just going to be easier to maintain a normal amount of calories as well. Just because if you look at the calories in some junk foods, fast foods, milkshakes, stuff like a bag of hot Cheetos. It's kind of insane.
Cheetos, yes, sir.
But if you're eating all of those kind of processed foods, those junk foods, really, the calories are going to be through the roof quite easily. So if you're eating whole foods and sticking to that, it's going to be much easier to maintain a normal amount of calories. And also, because it doesn't have the random chemicals, you're going to avoid the negative long-term consequences of consuming those chemicals. And in areas with like just lower standard regulation and whatnot, a lot of Southeast Asian countries, China, even U.S. is, not that great in comparison. Canada is solid. A lot of places in Europe is usually better. And honestly, you can tell kind of the standard of it just by looking at the ingredients in some like the same fast food item, but in different countries, see what's actually put in it, and just kind of read what each chemical or each ingredient does, right? So when you're just eating whole foods in general, makes it way easier to avoid those weird chemicals that's added into foods, and that's gonna have varying if healthy effects in the long term, just kind of depending on what you're actually eating and not eating. It really depends on the person and how they react with each chemical. So yeah, I think in general, whole food just helps with stuff being normally regulated, and also I feel like it makes you feel better. Eating junk food just doesn't help with my energy level or stuff like that. That's for sure. Mm-hmm. And in terms of like Lorenzo, you're talking about social reasons and ethical reasons. Whole foods in general, much better, especially if you're shopping locally. Right?
Oh, dude, I was sitting with my knees up, with my feet up on the chair. Jesus Christ. Oh, Lord, hold on. You can continue, George. I'm going to try to pace around my room for a second. Oh, God, can I
That's
even
all
stand?
I was going to say. And with that, no, I think we're going to be done talking about diets. If anyone know any diet that could fix back problems, let us know. Lorenzo seems to be needing that right now.
Jesus. Oh.
Ooh.
As he screams the Lord's name in vain.
Oh, my God.
Oh man! For those who's not looking at the audio version, Lorenzo is actually pacing around his room in what seems to be an immense amount of pain and discomfort. Huge rip to him. So. Instead of focusing on this negative thing we're seeing, let's talk about the highlights of the previous week. Maybe you can start, Raymond.
Just been hitting the gym a lot more.
Hey, yes, sir.
Getting back into it. Loving it. Feels good, man. School gym though, bro. Okay, regular. Damn, I'm a rant real quick, all right? This is a highlight, but it's a negative highlight for now. So, dude, regular gyms, you don't need to book your gym sessions and you have unlimited time in them. But for school, it's literally an hour only and you have to book it. Oh my gosh, dude, it's so frustrating because it feels like you're rushing through it. Bro, I condensed my 2-hour workouts down to an hour or 55 minutes. You can't do that. I miss out on so much gains, dude. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I mean, our school, it's even worse because you don't actually get access to the entire gym. You just are set up with specific equipment. So if you were to book online, you basically choose which equipment. Yeah, so not only is there a time limit, but there's equipment limit. So
my gosh,
school gyms in general not very good.
It's not it, fam.
One of the reasons why I don't go to the school gym or go to any gym, I just work out at home. Got the power tower, I think it's called, over the summer, as I've addressed before. Very good for working out. You could get very solid workouts using that. That is for sure. But glad to see that you are getting back into the gym and loving it. Lorenz, are you ready to tell us your highlight, or are you still in too much pain?
My highlight, literally yesterday, I was doing this thing. What was it? It was these back raises. I forget what they're called. But we used to do them for weightlifting all the time. But I was literally thinking damn, you know what? Other than my shoulder problems, I think my back problems have finally gone away. Oh my god. Dude, honestly, dude, it's sitting posture, dude. I need a chair with proper lumbar support, man, because Jesus Christ.
It's also
it's just not comfortable to sit with proper posture. But then I end up with these problems. Either way, highlight of the week.
Not having these problems until now.
Probably, to be honest. No. Highlight. Just watching more of the Andrew Huberman podcast. Dude, that's just so good. The Huberman Lab podcast, really good. 10 out of 10. Second favorite podcast, just behind Young and Foolish podcast.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. All right. I guess I'll finish off with my highlight. I'm gonna continue on this negative train because my highlight, to put in a positive way, is that I made it through last week. Gotta say, last week was actually pretty solid, but once I got into the weekend, for some reason I had no energy, meaning that like I really just didn't get anything done until like basically on Sunday I started to get a little bit done, but really just picking up the pace now and almost caught up to how much I want to get done, which is always quite a bit. So it's nice that I made it through the energyless weekend, the fatigued weekend, and is basically back on track. And
hey, let's go.
Lorenzo has risen from the dead. It appears.
Oh no!
He's trying to stand up.
Someone get this man a cane, bro.
How old is he?
Jesus Christ, bro! I just have to walk over here because we gotta WebMD this shit, dude. Straight up. Oh God.
Oh brother.
Oh,
all right.
Oh my God.
That's it for me. Anything else to say, or are we good?
Sit with the posture, kids. Oh.
Hey man, I heard the Carnivore Diet can fix that, bro. Come on, dude.
I guess to end off, I will just kind of summarize basically the key points from our episode this week on specific diets. So I would say that basically the results of each diet is going to differ person to person. It's very individualized. It depends on a lot of factors, and that most drawbacks of most diets can usually be addressed by finding good sources and using supplements, definitely supplements. And then mindful eating and moderate caloric restrictions are basically gonna be beneficial, and that eating too much carb too often, definitely unhealthy. And I think that basically covers the main points that I was keeping track of this episode. And that's gonna be it from us this week. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.